If you'd have told the 18-year-old me that I would actually have the chance to check out Artisan prototypes, I would have absolutely shat my pants. But today we're actually here checking out new Artisan pads, especially the Key83 being the most interesting one. And then I'll also be going over the Hayate Otsu V2, which now actually is a real revision and not the Hayate Otsu V2 that we have been referring to inside of the community for the past few years. But before we do that, I wanted to mention that of course all these pads were sent out to me by Artisan themselves because they are prototypes. And I would also truly appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it if you are at all interested in peripheral enthusiast reviews. First of all, I want to mention that I don't have the Type 99. It was mainly because I personally am not interested in it because it is a very slow control pad, but it is also because it actually wasn't available when I was asking for these units. And I also do want to truly appreciate Tahara-san here for actually taking care of me and also communicating with me over through Twitter. This really does feel like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me, and I hope to be able to check out more of their pads in the future again. And since these are prototypes, I will also be asking for the final units once they release, just so that I actually have all of the newest units in stock and also their new upcoming square size, which they are finally doing now. This is actually a huge year for Artisan. Not only are they releasing new pads and collabing with other fellow reviewers, they're also introducing a brand new freaking size and also the new Raiden Soft, which was not a thing before that. Their new Type 99 also looks freaking amazing in the matcha green color, and I'm so looking forward to checking out all that new stuff. But before we do any of that, we need to talk about the Key83, which is going to be the final name for this pad, which was previously referred to as the Rokkaku. First of all, this is not a speed pad. You might be confused because the Rokkaku name was thrown around Twitter all the time in our enthusiast scene, but that was actually the Rokkaku speed that people were talking about so much and asking for because that was a pure demon speed pad, so fast to the point where Tahara-san called it almost unusable, which is why it most likely won't enter production in that state. They even stated in their description here of the Rokkaku speed that these specialized threads made the glide disgustingly fast. That is how fast that Rokkaku speed actually was. But this is the normal Rokkaku and will be called the Key83 for launch and also have the Key83 logo down here. But obviously I don't have any logos on this pad because this is a prototype. I have spent at least a month on this surface, as you can see by the streaks of my nails here. So I am definitely able to give you a real in-depth perspective of this pad. Before we dig into this surface, which is very unique, I want to mention that the stitching is below the surface. I have got the soft variant here, and of course this is your normal Artisan Rogers Boron. Getting into the briefing first, they say that the Key83 features a unique hexagonal weave pattern, and that is what is the most interesting part about this pad, and also what makes it so insanely consistent. It is basically impossible for me to actually show you the weave of this pad, so instead I will blend in a picture here on screen, and what this does is that instead of having vertically or horizontally aligned knitting, is that this pad kind of distributes it in all of those directions with those hexagonal weaves. That contributes a lot to the consistency of this pad, and it is a feeling that I've never had with any other pad out there. And no matter what direction I flick or track in Kovacs or whatever, it just feels the exact same. It is insanely uniform. They also say that its smooth glide benefits scenarios where you aim diagonally, such as zoomed aiming or various vertical movements in arena shooters, and that I just completely agree with. And no matter what direction you flick or track or whatever, it just feels like you're almost using a glass pad in terms of the actual consistency of the pad itself. In terms of the texture, this is definitely not as textured as the Hayate Otsu. It is also not as textured as the Zero, but the texture itself reminds me the very most of the Hayate Ko. For those of you who don't know about the Hayate Ko, it is a different variant inside of the Hayate family, which is kind of a Hayate Otsu with more stopping power, but also a very different texture in my opinion. The Hayate Otsu is actually very textured in my personal opinion, especially on a fresh copy of this Hayate Otsu V2. Not as textured as the Hien, but still pretty darn textured. And when comparing it to the Ko feels a lot smoother, but it still kind of has this micro texture to it. And this texture is basically identical to the Key83 here. It is just a very slight texture that I'm always comfortable with and has never annoyed me at all. And it is definitely more safe than the Hayate Otsu. But the huge benefit that this Key83 actually has over the Hayate Ko especially is that this is completely uniform and no matter what direction you aim in, unlike the Hayate Ko, which actually has a pretty big difference in X and Y speeds. Now when comparing this pad to others, I saw that Boardsy called this a better Hien, And in my personal opinion, that is almost offensive. The texture is nowhere near being a Heian. It is much more subtle, and a Heian is also definitely faster than a Key83. Whilst the Heian kind of sits between a balance and a speed pad, the Rokkaku definitely has a bit more control to it. I would definitely say that this is much more similar to the Hayate Otsu, and that is why I'm only gonna keep these two pads on my desk for the rest of the video. The gliding experience in terms of speed is overall pretty darn similar, but I do feel that my Hayate Otsu is slightly faster. The way that I would describe this Key83 is a slightly more controlled Hayate Otsu that has a bit less texture to it, and is also just as consistent as a cloth pad could possibly be. I would basically call this a better Hayate Otsu. I personally don't see a real reason why anybody would pick the Otsu or even the Heian over this thing, because this is just as consistent as a cloth pad can really be. Of course, it is not quite as fast as a Heian, so if you want more speed, definitely go for either a Heian or even the new Raiden Soft, which you could see being a new fan favorite amongst our scene. But other than that, I really hope that I can get a square unit in so that I can simply have that one pad that will always be as consistent as possible and that I never have to think about when using, because I know how freaking uniform it is. But since we've talked about the Key83 enough for now, I think it's about time we talk about the new Hayate Otsu V2. I do have an old Hayate Otsu lying around, but that thing has been washed like 8 times already, so it's far away from being in a stock condition. But going from an out-of-the-box feel, it does definitely feel faster than I remember it being, but that is probably just because my old unit is so used and abused. When going into the paper, they say that we have integrated conductive threads to the Hayate Otsu for better performance under low humidity environment, and that is the actual reason why I was sent this pad. I have a Raiden mid that I have severe static electricity issues under low humidity. Normally the humidity here sits at around 40%, which is pretty low, and when going over my Raiden mid with my core pads or even any other types of skates, I was constantly building up static electricity and sapping the bottom of the base. So that is why they have now switched to also using conductive threads here on the Hayate Otsu V2, and maybe also in the Raiden next year when they will be doing a revision. They also do mention that they're now using those threads inside of the Key83 and the Type 99 as well. So if you're at all worried about static electricity, there's no reason to be worried anymore. But other than those conductive threads, there's actually no difference. The pad is still slightly textured. It has this very unique zigzag weave on it. And yeah, it's just an Hayate Otsu. So if you are wondering if you should upgrade your Hayate Otsu to this new V2 version, only do it if you have static electricity issues. Other than that, there's no reason to get it unless your pad is very used and you simply want a new pad that is more consistent over the entirety of the space of the pad. I personally have mained the old Hayate Otsu for at least 2 years, and yet again, I absolutely freaking love this pad, but I will say that I prefer the Key83 over it just in terms of consistency. Of course, I do feel that the Key83 is a tiny bit slower, but the change is more than welcome in my personal opinion, because this consistency is something that I've never felt on any other pad out there. A new pad that is also currently launching is the Type 99, which I personally don't have here. It is supposed to be an actual control pad, which is very slow. My reviewer friend Stubby is the biggest fan of this pad, especially because he's always wanted that real control pad that is nearly muddy, and getting that from freaking Artisan is like a godsend for him. But since I don't own it currently, I'm just gonna pray to ARTISAN to receive the new matcha green version in the near future. Other than that, that's already it for this video. Huge thank you again to ARTISAN for considering me to check out all of these pads. I truly appreciate it, and I hope to be able to work together with them in the future as well. I would also truly appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it for any of my upcoming enthusiast grade reviews. And if you're at all interested in entering a enthusiast community here for the peripheral space, definitely consider joining pericord.com, which is our Discord server that aims to be the one-stop shop for anything peripherals and the community that comes with it. Other than that, I'll see you guys very soon. Peace out.